to all you kids out there, when you're taking care of your birds, and you look at their water, think to yourself, would you drink it? Would you take that and drink it? He said, if you won't drink it, then your bird shouldn't have to drink it. And that stuck with me as a little kid. I was like, 12 years old, 13 years old. And it's like, it made a whole lot of sense. Medications and stuff like that. I stay away from medications unless I got a sick bird. But don't really give many sick birds because I don't do a whole lot of bringing in, from other lofts and stuff like that. So I have my own little ecosystem. And so as long as I'm not bringing anything in, there's really no reason for them to get sick. So I just stay, heavy on the feed and grit, and you clean them out, you worm them, gut bacteria. You want to stay up on the probiotics, and that's pretty much it. Okay, well, prepping for competition. One of the biggest things you want to do, or that I do, is clean them up. Ideally, if you got 30 days, that's enough time, to how would I say, not rotate them, but let's just say if I've got 30 days, I worm them first, and so even if they don't have a lot of worms, or that just cleans any parasites out. So if you worm them, that clears the system out. Then you take a cap full of bleach, put that in a gallon of water, give that to them the next day. That bleach clears out, the microorganisms, and it's just a natural, cleaner. And then you go with the apple cider vinegar the next day, and that's about a tablespoon to a gallon. That creates the acidic environment in the gut, and that opens everything up for to begin your program. So you clean them up real good. Now their system, you've killed basically all the bacteria, so you want to give them some probiotics, the gut bacteria. So that's good gut flora. And there's billions of microorganisms in the probiotics. I like to use Enduro Plus. That's that's the one I've been using for years. So they've got other ones, but that's the one that I use. And so you hit them with the gut bacteria for 2 or 3 days, and now you've got all the microorganisms, all the bad ones and the good ones have been flushed out, and then you're just regenerating with fresh, good gut bacteria. And the reason for that is, just think of yourself. I'm going back to the guy that said, would you drink this water? If you got a stomach ache, you're not going to perform. You're not going to go out there and run a track meet or do anything at your top level if you're not feeling right. And the birds are just like anything else. They hurt. They have stomach aches. A lot of times, you see a bird drop out of the kit, and you go, oh, that's a cold. And no, he's just not feeling well. Especially if you're breeding, quality pigeons, and the bird has been performing at this level, and then he just drops off. Well, now you got a little issue. So, the best thing to do is you don't just go out there looking to cull something. You bring him in, hit him with, some 4-in-1 or, an ideal pill, anything like, just to get him back on track. And, give him a rest for a little bit, put him back in the kit. There are culls, sometimes birds just drop off and just, they can't handle the role anymore. But you got to give them a chance, and the best way to gauge what you're doing is make sure your birds are healthy, especially going into a competition. What I do is I'll start with like 24 birds, and I'll fly them every day. And if I got a team that's working every day flying, you're gonna see birds that don't want to hang. So if I start with 24, got a couple that that are, not hanging because I haven't really put the pressure on them yet. And so I'll just take those out. And, usually if I start with 24, 25 birds, after that first week, I'm down to 22. And after that, after that first week of flying every day, then the second week, I'll go to like every other day. And so I'll fly them and rest them.
What about
the food prep? Now, see, my family is different than a lot of families out there. I mean, well, it seems like most families are different in certain ways, but for me, if I'm flying every day, I'm just watching them. I use 15.5% mix, low carb as my base, and I use hard red wheat as an adjuster or cut. And so I try to keep them, with the birds of prey that we have out here, we used to be able to let them fly 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. If they fly more than 20, 25 minutes, you're taking a chance, so we try to get them up and down, so I use the mix and the wheat because the birds will fly less time on straight wheat, and they'll fly longer and they're stronger with the mix. So it just depends on how they flew that day. If they're trying to elevate higher than I want them to elevate, or if they're flying longer than I want them, then I'll cut down on the mix and go up on the wheat. And so I adjust that way. If they're only flying 5 minutes or something like that, they might get a whole cup of mix. So it's a balancing act. Those characteristics that we're talking about, the number of breaks that, how their activity, their frequency and depth, and all that is primarily in your breeding. So I use the feed to regulate how they fly. The actual work and everything is in the breeding. That's in the birds. So when I'm adjusting the feed, it's more for get them to fly, to have them fly at the right height and have them fly at the right speed, and then of course we want to get frequency and depth and that kind of thing. You really can't get that speed out of them if they're weak. So you're not trying to break them down. If you do break them down, now that's another thing with rollers. It's for them to roll, you're kind of stoking that nervous system, and so you kind of gotta figure that out for yourself on your birds. What triggers them, and sometimes it is the amount of feed, or you hold back the feed and kind of stress them a little bit. Some birds perform better when they're on the downswing, and some perform better on the upswing. As far as my teams, I like to compete with them on the upswing when they're getting stronger, because I like that speed, and I don't want them weak and rolling slow. And you can get sloppy roll if they're too weak. And there's a difference between a bird being weak and sloppy or a bird just genetically sloppy, So there's just so many different ways to look at it. You just gotta pay attention to all those characteristics and what pushes them to react, the way they do. After a 6-month lockdown, what's funny is we are locking down at the best time to to roll pigeons. They roll so much better, once the molt is over and you got cool, crisp weather and stuff like that. We're flying at the worst time. So if I was able to fly in the winter, I could do it in 2 weeks, because their mind isn't on mating and the weather is completely different. What we're doing is we're shutting down at the best time to fly, and then we start flying in the spring, and that's natural for birds to breed. And so those cocks are going to have breeding on their mind, and the hens also. The weather's changing; it's getting hotter, so it takes a lot longer. It's a completely different process, when you've been locked down all fall and winter, and then you're coming into the spring. But I guess to answer that question, it takes about 45 days or so to get them, on point. Sometimes it may even take longer. You're gonna have some of those cockbirds that just, you're gonna have to set them aside and continue flying the other birds, and then get that out of their head, and then join, put them back in the team, after the rest of the guys are, have gotten back on the wing. So when I shut them down, I do separate them, cocks from hens, try to get that, breeding thing out of their head, because when I'm flying, I don't separate, hen teams and cock teams. I fly them together. The best performers get to be in the team. And as far as the competition team goes, they have to perform to a certain level to make it to that team. So if there's an issue with them, they're not getting in that team. And I think the hens, because I've had cock teams where the cock's made up anyway. I've had hen teams where the hen's made up anyway. So as long as they're not laying eggs and stuff in there, and they're not, mating up and then causing an issue, because I've looked in the kit box and, they'd be in the corner doing their thing and whatever, As long as they're not laying eggs and they're not, leaving the team and, causing an issue, I don't mind them being mated in the kit box, the hens don't really cycle eggs unless they're fed, a diet where, they're going to be able to take care of the young anyway. So as long as they're on a kit flying diet, the hens aren't going to cycle anyway. So I don't have a problem with hens and cocks flying together. But when I separate them, and now they're getting all the food that they need, you have to kind of, because they'll continue to breed. So yeah, you got to separate the cocks and the hens. Okay, so this is the open loft. These are all cocks in here. I've taken the hens out. Everything's broken up right now. Haven't gotten around to the winter cleaning yet, but that's next. But right now, we look at some of these birds. I don't know if you see this guy back here with his neck coming out right. Hit this guy right here. He was one of my. I don't remember what year he is right now, but he was one of the best performers in the team. And everybody was commenting on how fast he was and what have you. And while we're watching him, a falcon snatches him and takes off with him. I'm like, this was the bird I was gonna stock. And he's gone, and I'm watching the falcon take off with him. My stomach was here, my heart was here in my stomach. Turns out, came home that evening, and he was under the kit box. His whole neck was snatched out. Usually when you have a falcon hit, you can take some thread and sew him up, or you can, put some crazy glue and, patch him up. But his whole neck was snatched out. I don't even know how he got home. I tried to feed him and the food wouldn't go down. So I had to baby him that, for, a couple of weeks, it seems like, and it just healed on its own. These pigeons are so, resilient, because I couldn't, I couldn't stitch him up, but I did take a picture where you could see the plug taken out of his neck. So I don't know how he got home. Turns out to be one of my best producers. So, you know how you go back to the falcon always takes your best one? I'm a firm believer in that. It doesn't matter. I mean, the bird may be having a bad day and wasn't rolling that day. He'll still come and snatch him, They always take your best one. But I just thought that's a pretty good example, and yeah, he's a nice one. But yeah, if you see his neck, those feathers are, stick out like that. And that's why. I guess just look, if you just wanted to, a little background on what's going on. My oldest cock in here is 700. That's this guy. Where's he at? And He's probably about 14 years old now. He's still, hits here and there, but that's speed. And the thing is, I like speed, so I really can't, break it down to, this one is, for speed, so I'd have to, pull them out and pair them up, based on, on performance. Some carry, deeper characteristics, and some are faster, and some are more frequent, and so I just try to keep a balance going. You may see a lot of different colors, not a whole lot of different colors, because the family is what the family is. But if you look at their heads and their bodies and the size, it's all uniform. When you do crosses, you got to really pay attention to what you're doing when you do a cross. Reason being, if you bring in a bird that's not line bred or inbred, where they're all carrying the same characteristics, when you do cross them, you get a wide variety of different sizes and shapes and what have you. So if you don't want to stay, you do want to stay away from a variation. If you're flying kit competition, you want them to be on the same page, and you want them to pretty much react to the same food, the same amount of food, and so that's the crux of inbreeding and live breeding, because you're trying to get birds that are all like-minded, and it makes it a lot easier when you're prepping your birds and you're feeding them. You want them to be as close to the same page as possible. We're talking about the number of pigeons. So right now, I've got about 40 pair here. But when I'm breeding out of 20 pair, 18 pair, 20, 22 pair. I stay right around in there. So I've got birds that I'll put them on pause, I guess you might say. If I'm looking for a certain characteristic this season, I'm putting those pairs down, and then the other pairs, they'll go back down the next year or what have you. If a bird performs well enough to make it to the breeding loft, and he's from generations and generations of quality performing pigeons, he's gonna perform. He's gonna produce. Now it's your job to put him with the right hen or put her with the right cock. So if I bring a bird in and he's from generations and generations, because the only way he's going to make it in here is it's performing, and it's showing it's showing in the air what he's supposed to do, and so it's my job to put him with the right hen or the right cock. I've never had a cock or hen that didn't produce. I've had them not produce on each other. Now, so those babies are calls, but I take that same cock and put him on a different hen, because I've got 3 different sides that I can go to. So if this hen and this cock produce roll downs, or if this hen and this cock produce birds that didn't want a kid, or whatever the reason that they're not what I would say producing quality pigeons, it's not the pigeon, it's my parent. So I can safely say that I've never had a bird that I've brought back in that didn't produce. It's just up to me to put him on the right hen. And most times, they work out because they're family, they're all related. So if I have a bird that's rolling really deep, but he's too deep for the team, but he's rolling right, he's just too deep for the team. He's rolling, 60 feet or whatever like that. I'll bring him in. I don't have a problem with it. And I'll put him on a fast hen that might be rolling 25 feet. I don't breed from birds that are less than 20 feet. If they can't get 20 feet, they're still scoreable pigeons, so I'll still keep them, around in the kit boxes. But to make it to the loft, it's got to be well over 20 feet. 20, 25 feet is the minimum. and there's really no maximum on depth as long as they don't roll down. And so that's how I keep the depth and I keep the roll going. 35. I'll show you 135. She's past, but she's a foundation bird. He's an 08. I mean, I've had birds still breeding at 15 years old, and if you really think about it, birds that have that longevity, they're birds that mature a little later as well. You know, sometimes you'll have, you know, those early developers, and they're strutting around at 3 months old. You know, those birds come in a lot earlier, and in most cases, those birds peter out a lot earlier too. Not just in the kit. You know, a lot of times you get those birds that start rolling and going, you know, heavy into the roll too young, and they just can't handle it. You know, they might last you 6 months or a year, but then that following year, they just don't come back. Whereas you got the birds that have, you know, the longevity, they might start rolling young, but they don't put on the heat until the following year. The birds that I'm breeding this year are basically birds that I'm going to be, you know, competing with the following year or afterwards. And yeah, I've got kid birds now. I mean, we had that, you know, we had, you know, COVID and the Newcastle thing where I kind of had to start all over as far as, you know, the kit birds go. Because I have, what, 5, 6, 7-year-old birds in the kit box at that point. So I think the oldest bird in my kit box right now is probably a 2020. Again, yeah, they got to have that longevity. They got to be able to come back that next year. And you got to be able to, you know, depend on them. And so I guess just take this bird for example. He's older now, but you can still feel that back muscle. The back muscle goes from here right along here. And those birds that don't have that back muscle, you might get a fast one here or there, but those are the ones that really can't handle it. You know, there's a lot of strength in here, and then when the you know, the propensity to roll, you know, takes effect, this muscle actually contracts, and that's when that bird brings it in like that. And so that's how you really get that speed. It's just like, you know, you're watching an ice skater. You know, when they're slowing down, they do this. When they speed up, they bring it in like that. And then when they want to slow back, they do that. And same thing with the birds. But if they don't have that muscle, and most of them don't. I mean, if you see a bird spinning, I mean, really blurring out, you bring it down, you're gonna feel that little bit of muscle. The ones that don't, the ones that just roll, and there's a difference between rolling and spinning. Rolling, the bird is turning over, but spinning, the wings start to blur out like the hummingbird. When you see a hummingbird, you know, just, you know, levitating, and it's just a blur. The birds blur out too. A lot of people say, "Oh, look at that spinner." It's like, no, bird ain't spinning until you start seeing it blur out. You know. So what I was getting at is those birds that roll. 99% of them, you put your thumb right here, you feel the spine. You know, you just feel the vertebrae right there. You don't feel a little muscle right there. And a lot of times, you know, like when I'm evaluating a bird or whatever, and somebody hands me a bird, this is the fastest bird I ever had. You know, this bird is blah, 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 blah. I can look at it and go, you know, I might not tell him, no, let's throw him up. Let's see what he do, you know, because I can, you know, pretty much tell just by, you know, the strength of the bird if this is a real spinner or not, you know. And it takes time. But this is an 08, and this is 2024. He's an 08 digger. This is his mom. I got a better picture of her, but this is his mom. And she's in the book. She's a foundation bird, 135. This turned out to be a hell of a breeder. His number is 53. Now he's all 72. 72 is a foundation bird. that he bred until he was 18 years old, his daddy. And I told a story about this before. He went dry on me, and I was like 18 years old. This is my boy. I just had him in the cock pen break up. And then one day I looked in there, and he was over in the corner, and the cocks were like trying to work him. They saw he was getting old, and they was just, he was an old dude, So I was like, oh man, I can't do that. So I pulled him out and put him with the hens. It's like, you know what? As good as you done for me, I'll let you live with it. I mean,
so this is the oldest cock. I'm going to show you a picture of 135, which is the foundation hen. He's a son off of her, and
I seen he made up probably with one of the hens, and she laid eggs, and so I just already knew they weren't fertile, but I just let him just play around, man. Turned out to be fertile, man, and this little dude came out out of a 17, 18-year-old cockbird. And so I never flew him, but I bred out of him, and this is another one of my top breeders. And I never flew him, and he turned out to be a monster. Came out of the hen breakup. This bird is another one of my top producers. One of the reasons why I brought him out is just the fact that this dude rolls 100 feet without a problem. The thing about him, he'll have that propensity to roll, and he'll do 100 feet, and you just say, okay, there's no way he's getting back up there to the team, and he'll just head on right back up there. He'll do another 100 feet, and then the people will be, does he do this all the time? I'm like, yeah, but then after he got that out, he's 30 footer, 35 footer, the rest of the fly. But it seemed like every time he went out, he always had to knock off 100, 150 feet every time. And he turned out to be a good producer. It's kind of one of those birds where I said, I'll take a 100-foot bird without a problem. Some people go, oh no, that's too deep. I'm like, because he puts me out, good 30 footers, 40 footers all the time. I can't say that any of his youngsters did that, but he was one of those. So if I was putting pairs together, I got say 3 cocks and 3 hens, and I'm going to put them together. When I was building my family, I was looking at balance, and I was looking at expression, and I was like, okay, she's going to compliment him, he's going to compliment her. But if you look at these, they're all about the same size. They all have that expression because they made it into the breeding loft. And like I was saying, they all those real deal pigeons have that same characteristic. So I'm looking not so much on balance anymore. Now I'm looking at performance, how they express it in the air. So if this bird is super deep, this bird is super fast, whatever, I'll say, okay, they complement each other. Sometimes they're both about the same. This bird is a 30 footer. He's medium velocity, and this hen is a 30 footer, but she's killing it. I'll do that, but I won't put 2 medium velocity birds together because now you're promoting medium velocity. And so myself, I got to have the velocity. Again, if all I want to do is win, if that's my priority is to win, I think I could probably put up way more points than I do on a given day if I just had slower pigeons. But I can't get out in the backyard every day and watch slow pigeons. I gotta see it, and so. That's how, at this point, that's how I put them together now. It's how they express themselves in the air, not how they express themselves on the ground. But building, yeah, I had to pay really close attention to that to get them all on the, on the same page. When you're looking for a bird that's built right to roll straight, he still has to have the engine, but he still has to have the body. Because if you take an engine out of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and then you put it in a Volkswagen or a Kia or something like that, you got a fast engine, but the car's not built to handle that type of speed. It's gonna fishtail. It's gonna do all kinds of things. This is not aerodynamically built for that. So when you're talking about kit competition or just a roller, all this stuff goes out the door, because the bird is all you're looking for is a bird that rolls in unison and breaking together. That's the cusp of it. The guys that really want to pay attention to the quality, the actual quality, the velocity of the spin, and the style. And the style, the style is wing placement. So a bird doing a full stroke from top to bottom, the wings it's gonna look like this in the air. The ones that are doing this halfway, it's gonna look like an X. You're gonna have the wing is gonna be here, and it's gonna be here. It's not going all the way. So if you look at this bird, and you look at his tail from the top, it just looks like one feather. It's not spread out like this. It's one feather. So that's going to be balanced in the air. On the wing, you open the wing up, you see air can get through here, kind of like a whirlybird on the top of a house. You know how the wind catches that and it spins. If that air can get through, you want it to look like that. You want it to be louvered, and you want those secondaries to be thin and shorter. If you got a long, broad secondary wing, you got parachutes. Each one of these, you got to look at them as a parachute. So the bird is trying to get his wings up, but he's pulling all his drag with him. So this is what I'm talking about when you're talking, type and built correctly. So if I got a judge I know is coming to town that doesn't even know about style or doesn't care, and I can have the birds doing this, all this goes out the door, because he's going to give them a high quality multiplier because they're breaking together. He doesn't know the true mechanics of the high end spinner, and this is not something that's just happenstance or just something that you happened upon. This is breeding, and you're breeding for that. So basically, when you're looking at the individual spinner, if you're going to grade a pigeon on velocity, style, depth, frequency, now you got to have these attributes, because a bird that's carrying a big, heavy wing is not going to be able to. If you're grading them on style, there's no way they're going to be able to compete with a bird that's built correctly. You may have the engine, but think about, you take that Lamborghini or that Ferrari engine and put it in a Ferrari that's aerodynamically built to handle that. That's the difference. And same thing, if you take this Ferrari and put this Hyundai engine in it, it might look like he looks good. And that goes back to when we were talking about, when they say, well, if the type is right, it's like, no, the type is right, but it still has to have the engine. So I could take that Lamborghini and put a Hyundai engine in there and then try to compete against a real Lamborghini that's got the engine and the aerodynamics. It's not going to be able to compete. We would like to have that. We want a narrow wing with short secondaries. We talked about the back muscle. You want to just go like that. If you can feel the spine, the vertebrae going like that, there's no muscle there. But if you just go lightly over it, you're not gonna feel like a muscle, but you're not gonna feel that spine, and it's being covered by that muscle. So it's not gonna be strong enough for you to say, oh, that's the muscle, but you're not gonna feel the vertebrae. And so that's what you're looking for on that. If we go and look at these guys, these are breeders. These are long-term breeders. Those are foundation type pigeons. And if you look at them, they're balanced. It's not an overly long pigeon. And when Pensum talked about that apple body, what he's talking about is look at the bird as an apple in the body, and then you look at the neck. Some people say, oh, I like cobby pigeons, you know, where they're really heavy in the front. Well, you don't want heavy on the front or the rear. You want it balanced. So you want to start with an apple, and then you want it to be balanced. Same thing on this guy. If I take him out and you look at that tail, just bounces right into place, and it's, you know, you can tell that this is a balanced pigeon. You know that he. So when you're building a family and you're building birds, you want that look, and it goes along with the role. You take these birds and you look at the best ones. They possess that look. You know, there's always going to be the exception to the rule, where you're going to have some that just don't look it, but they go up there and kill it. But for the most part, when you're looking at it, it's kind of like a dog. You got some dogs, they have that expression. You run up there and you pet him, or if he's doing something you don't want him to do, you'll kick him. You don't even know him because you know there's nothing about him just by looking at him. Some of them, they'll bark and growl and everything. You go, okay, you're expressing to me that you bite, or that, you know. But then some of them, they ain't gotta stand up, they ain't gotta bark. You know, you just look at their eye and you go, oh shit, I'm not messing with that. You know, same thing with the birds, but you know, it's something that you learn over time. And you look at them, you look at that expression, you go, oh yeah, he's showing it. You know, you still don't know until you see him in the air, but you can look at him and go, he's not carrying the traits that I've seen these spinners do. And so it's part of the thing. It's expression. So it's not the eye. The eye is part of it, but it's the way they're carrying themselves, the way they look. They look like they can do what you're saying they can do. Okay. I've heard so many people say that they can just breed off the ground without flying them, and they'll say if the type is right, the role is right. That you can throw that out of the door. The ones that do that, you gotta ask them to put them up. It's like, okay, if you're able to do this, then you know, throw your hat in the ring in the World Cup. You know, let's see it. You know, because when people say that they can do it, you know, well, yeah, they got pretty birds. I can show you a call that will go and land in a tree if I let him out. And he looks pretty in a motherfucker, you know. But and he got all the muscle. You got the breast muscle, you got the back muscle, you got the, you know, all that. But you know, so you can't just go off of that. You know, they still have to express it in the air. And so, no, if you think you can breed rollers, you might be able to breed showbirds that way. But if you're talking about an athlete, a performer, then he's got to express it in the air, and the only way to do that is to fly him. So you know, that's pretty much it. I mean, you can breed a pretty pigeon, and if you go back to Charles Darwin, who was expressing the theory of evolution, he was a pigeon man, because pigeons are easy, very easy to change their look. And he used the pigeon, you know, to express how, you know, evolution works. And if I want to build a pigeon to look a certain way, it's really easy. I mean, you can give me, you know, 2 commies or whatever, or a commie and a roller, and I don't have to fly any of them, but I can just breed them successive generations and make them look like the shit. You know, I can make them have the expression. I can make them have the muscle. They could have everything, but they're not going to perform. Mm-hmm. So no matter how you try to slice it, you got to put them up. And if anybody tells me that different, you know, that they've gone successive generations without flying them, Okay, let me see this next season. I'll come by and see them fly. And if they're, you know, if you can put a competitive team up by going successive generations without flying them, well, shoot, I want to buy some. I'll pay you for them. Not that I'm going to use them, but I'll just give you money. So I wouldn't say I buy them. I'd say I'll give you money for doing it. You know, let me see them. You know, because ain't gonna happen. I've been around too long. That's one of those absolutes. You know, there's always the exception to the rule, but on that, if you're breeding successive generations without flying them, you're not gonna. It's not gonna happen. She's not gonna show us, you know, what we're looking for when we're talking about the mechanics of the roll. I just wanted to pull her out just to. You see her wiggling, and she's a kit pigeon. She's not a breeder, but this is one of those birds that'll roll, you know, twice a minute and keep the team on point. You know, she's not breaking off on her own and stuff like that, but when the team breaks, or if I need a bird to initiate the break, this is one of those birds. Yeah, that was me getting started. That next picture is that's Charles Robinson, one of the guys that got me started back, you know, in the old CRS days. He flew CRS and MCRC. That's Leroy Washington, Cedric, and Eddie Scott. Now, they tell me Leroy Washington was the one that actually started the CPRC. I have to, you know, verify that, but I mean, back in the day, he was the president of the CPRC out here in the Inland Empire. That next one, that's Arnold Jackson. That's a little younger Arnold Jackson. I raised pit bulls back in those days, and that was one of the ones he was taking home. The next one, that's Cornell Norwood. That's Arnold Jackson's daughter that he's holding. She's grown and got children now. She lives in the UK, but goes back. That's Cornell with a bottle of Bacardi. This is the beginning of the day, and I guess that was the end of the day. Okay, that's Mike the Russian, me and Pete the Russian. I think I was about, I don't know, probably about 23 years old then, 23, 24, somewhere around in there. And then that's Bobby Reese. He was my homeboy. He was picking up one of those puppies as well that I had. Yeah, he named her Shuggy. He was a good dog. But anyway, one of my foundation hens, he bred. This was back in 1981, I think it was, or 82, when I did that mating with Willie Wright. Bobby Reese was instrumental in that hen. Okay, and so that's my cousin Terry Duncan in the middle, my buddy Daryl Richards, and Mike the Russian. They were framing my first loft when I moved out here. And that's, yeah, they were still framing it right there.